Hello, welcome to part 2 of my life with the shy and retiring Brian Blessed. When I left you last time, I'd arrived at his house and we'd just gone into his log cabin to begin the interview process. And what I remember most about that was after the first, I was there for about 3 weeks. Usually I might be there for about 5 or 6 days to get the initial interviews in the can. But I was there for as long as Brian wanted me to be, and he had a lot to say. So I was there for about 3 weeks. I would sort of arrive for a few days, we'd do a few hours, I'd go back to my Airbnb, do some work, we discussed what we'd done the day before, the day after, etc. And it was great fun, it really, really was. And the more we got into it, the more we remember things, and so, you can come back tomorrow, actually, can you come back down in a few days? And it went on for 3 weeks, and it was wonderful. I really didn't want it to end, actually, because it was such an honour. He's such a great raconteur, Brian, he really, really is, he's one of the best. And for me to sit there and for him just to tell me story after story after story, it was one of those things you had to pinch yourself. It was fantastic. The only issue we had initially was I went back and I wrote the first few chapters, sent them to him, and I received a very sort of panicky email from his agent saying, Brian's really worried about the language. You've turned him into a swearer. Why have you added all this bad language, all this industrial language? And I was like, but I haven't. He said, oh, no, you must have. No, you really, really have. In the end, I had to travel down to Bagshot and sit with Brian and play him, 20, 30 minutes of an interview. So he realised that actually, if anything, I'd taken a bit of the swearing out. He was flabbergasted. He had no idea he swore as much as he did. He was a little bit embarrassed. He had no reason to be whatsoever. And then he was okay, and we sort of talked about it. I said, look, nobody cares. It's you. This is the whole point of this book, is to get you. And if you want to swear, you swear. Everybody fucking swears, for God's sake. And he was fine. So the swearing started. I did take a little bit out, I think. Yeah, I did. But it was, I really didn't want it to end. Another thing, it was Brian's generosity. I think I've already spoken in the last one about the fact that, he wanted to make sure I was okay, and, fish and chips and this, that and the other. Nothing was too much trouble. And when it came to the book, he insisted on including me, giving me this beautiful acknowledgement. And he didn't need to do that, because as a ghostwriter, you need to leave your ego at the door, because some people, they don't quite rightly, it's their book, you're helping them, and they want it to be their book, and that's absolutely fine. But Brian, even when he did interviews, he would mention me, he would name check me, saying, I've been working on this book with James Hogg, and he didn't need to do that. It was a lovely, lovely thing to do, but it was the mark of the man. I had the same thing with Timothy West when I worked with him. I'd stay at his house with him and Prue, first thing in the morning. We'd spend half an hour sort of chatting about, was I comfortable? Did I sleep okay? This, that, and the other. Brian was exactly the same. It was so, so nice. It was just a joy. And then the book did really, really well, which was nice. It was one of the biggest selling non-fiction books of that year, I think. And so we were asked to do another one. And I went down to Bagshot and we were having a chat. And we said, what's this one going to be about? And he was just telling me some stories. And he told me a story about, I told you last time about him having this sort of animal sanctuary at the bottom of his garden that he spent all his money on. And he was telling me about this fighting cock that had been thrown into his paddock by some gypsies. And I suppose they thought that he would, do something with it, nurse it back to health or whatever. And Brian did just that. And he told me this wonderful story about the fact that this fighting cock was with them for about 6 months. And he hated Brian. This cockerel was okay with everybody else, not a problem. About 3 feet tall, obviously with the talons. But as soon as it saw Brian, it would charge towards him. But he ended up spending about £500 or £600 on vet bills, getting this thing back to health. And he said that as soon as it was back to root health, the gypsies came in and stole him back. And I just remember that story and I laughed so much. And I said, that's it, that's the book. Let's have a kind of a chronological compendium of your experiences with animals that went right back to his childhood with dogs and things like that. And that's what we did. It's called The Panther in My Kitchen. It didn't do as well. For some reason, I don't know, sometimes, regardless of how good a book is, if it doesn't strike, it could be timing or whatever. I think it was down to timing, this one. But it's easily as good as the first, I think. And I really, really enjoyed writing that. It was fantastic, and it was a case, but unfortunately, because that one didn't do quite as well, we didn't get asked to do a third book, which was a shame. But that was a lot of fun. But before I leave you, after that book was published, Brian called me one day. He said, "Hello, lovely. I'm doing a charity gig in Leeds, and where I live." And he said, "Would you come along, hold my hand?" Brian's socially quite shy. Which perhaps won't surprise some of you. He's so outgoing, sorry, but when it comes, socially in a in a party, a room full of people. I think he finds it quite uncomfortable. So I said, of course. He said, I'll tell you what, bring your wife. I haven't met your wife yet. So I was like, okay, I'll bring my wife. And so we arrived at the Queen's Hotel in Leeds, all suited and booted. And we got there and he was being interviewed by somebody from, I think, ITV or something. And before I could introduce him, he looked at my wife and said, hello, love. You know me and him have been fucking each other for the past 3 years. And obviously that, my chin hit the fucking floor. My wife pissed herself, it was absolutely wonderful. But yeah, just pointed at me. We've been fucking each other for 3. I was like, Jesus Christ, I'm like, but only Brian could get away with something like that. Talk about breaking the ice, we had a wonderful afternoon. But I did actually go back to Brian with an idea a few years ago to do a book about the history of, like an anatomy of swearing, but on a global scale, and not just as sort of a book, like a list of flipping swear words, but how swearing, how industrial language differs geographically and the history behind. But unfortunately, he just said no, because Brian, I said in the last one about him he doesn't want to be a baddie. He doesn't want to be seen as being somebody, a negative, any kind of negativity associated with himself, with the person he's portraying, with a character or himself. He's not keen, and he just thought that could tarnish his reputation slightly. So I probably didn't sell it to him correctly, because I think it could have been really good. But anyway, that is my life with Brian Blessed. There is one other thing I need to, and I'll put it as a separate post. Actually, I'll probably put it on the end of here. I'm going to put it on the end of here. So if you stay tuned, when we were writing the first book, my son Henry was at school and he had to do a short biography of somebody famous. So he decided to do Brian, because obviously I was writing with Brian, and I told Brian this, and Brian insisted on doing a video specifically for Henry that he could play in class, sort of just to say thank you. And he did, and I said, okay, Brian, just remember, they're sort of, what would they have been? I said 9 or 10 years old, just no swearing. And he almost managed it. Anyway, I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Are you filming now?
I certainly am.
I mean, can Henry see me?
Henry can.
Henry, I hear you've done absolutely marvellously. I believe you got an A+. I believe you've done wonderfully well at school, writing about me. I'm absolutely thrilled to bits. I feel deeply honoured. You've done absolutely marvellously. Your dad's here in front of me, helping me marvellously with my book. I'm going to go on lots of adventures. I'm going to say to you now that you must go for it. Follow your dream. There's no one like you. You're very special. Go for it, and don't let the bastards grind you down. Lots of love to you, Brian Blessed. Many congratulations. I'll also add, from Flash Gordon, Gordon's alive! And you are alive! Good luck.